Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Leslea. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, historical, wonderful neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and very, very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, their principals, their librarians, their youth minister, and also let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, CastBox, Audible, Player FM, wherever you find your favorite shows. Really excited. All the guests on today's show are coming back. They've been on the show before, and they are wonderful. First up, Chiara Colombi and Scott Magoon, the author and illustrator of Rocket Beams, Lunar Dreams, are here to celebrate the release of their new book. And Leslea Wahl, she'll be here to celebrate her new YA title. It's called In Plain Sight. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Hey families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. Very excited to welcome back two guests to Reading with Your Kids. They're here to celebrate Rocket Beams and Lunar Dreams. Please welcome first the author, coming to us from California, Chiara Colombi. Hey, Chiara, welcome back. How are you?
Hi, Jed. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having us.
Delighted to have you back on. And also joining us from not too far from our Reading with Your Kids studios in Reading, Massachusetts, the illustrator, Scott Magoon. Hey, Scott, how's it going?
Hey, Jed. Hey, Chiara. It's going great. Thanks for having us.
Chiara, why don't we start with you? Could you tell us what Rocket Beams and Lunar Dreams are all about, please?
Sure. Well, if you're familiar with the first book, Rocket Ship Solo Trip, at the very end, Rocket kind of expresses her wish for her next mission, which is to go to the moon. This book is a follow-up to that story, and so her big dream is coming true. She's finally getting her lunar mission. But the dream doesn't come true quite as she expected it to. It turns out she's not the spacecraft that will be landing on the moon. Her job is to take up Lunar Lander, who's going to land on the moon. So over the course of this lunar mission that doesn't quite go the way she hoped, she has to work through a lot of big emotions. You know, there's jealousy of Lunar Lander. There's disappointment in not seeing her dream through. But ultimately, she works through those emotions to be able to find joy in what she has. And that's kind of the overall message of the story. And then you also get this adorable Lunar Lander character who I'm so excited for everyone to meet. Just a darling, the most darling Lunar Lander you'll ever see, I do believe.
Well, you know, that is, I can relate. to Rocket? Because I'd be pretty bummed if I, went all the way up to the moon and it's like, oh, you got to kind of sit here and park while we go down to the party.
Yep. That's basically, and the idea for the book came about because when I started to draft it, Scott hadn't yet started on the illustrations for the first book, so I wasn't sure what Rocket would look like. And it occurred to me, Rocket might not be the type of spacecraft designed to land on the moon. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can I have her do a lunar mission if she's not actually going to the moon? And then that's when it hit me. The emotions that I was feeling of disappointment in Rocket not going to the moon were Rocket's emotions. And then that's how the book came about.
I'm curious, Scott, how did you illustrate that emotion? Because that whole, the kind of jealousy kind of thing that siblings so often feel about one another and other kids feel. We don't like to talk about that too much, and I'm imagining very few of us kind of envision what that looks like.
Yeah, no, it's pretty, first of all, I had a blast drawing the second book in the series and building on what Chiara had done with book one. So we had the Rocket character kind of ready to go, and that I just kind of built on with Lander. And to your point, to your question, it's pretty lightly handled, I think. Didn't want to overdo it. Didn't want to make the book, too much of a downer. Still very upbeat, still very positive, in how they interact with each other because they're a team. And we wanted to sort of, emphasize that for sure, throughout the book. So by use of, for example, colors, there's a nice purple spread, it's sort of it rides that line between sort of, bittersweet, but also very sort of loving and warm, if you can imagine that in the middle of space as they make their way towards the moon. So color is a huge player in this book, not only to express emotions, but just to get color into space. I really tried to work in color to help keep it visually interesting, but also to support their narrative of this mission that turns out very differently than Rocket was hoping for.
Yeah. Chiara, I read on your website that you are still dreaming that one day you'll grow up to be an astronaut.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, it's funny because I started off college with astronaut dreams. And then I took a poetry writing class and realized I was a writer and they didn't really need astronaut writers yet, maybe one day. But it's funny to me because I've written so many stories since that realization. But Rocket Ship is my first book to come out into the world. And it really feels like I'm coming full circle. You know what? I made it into space as a writer somehow. And I still do dream of, wouldn't it be incredible to touch down on the moon? I probably not going to happen in my lifetime, but you never know. You never know.
You never know.
You never know. Absolutely. And that would be such a cool thing to have happen in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the meantime, I'm very much like Rocket where sure, maybe I won't touch down on the moon, but there's so many other things to explore in life. And there's, so much that I am grateful for and ways that I can engage with space through writing about it and through stargazing. I'm a big stargazer as well. So kind of Rocket's story in Rocket Beams Lunar Dreams is very similar to my story of, it didn't quite turn out the way I was thinking, becoming an astronaut, but, I'm still able to find a lot of joy in life, regardless of, of that.
So important. I'm wondering, Scott, I'm always amazed at the creative process, especially when it comes to visual arts, because I am useless at that. Anybody who sees the cover art from my episodes can probably tell that. But with Rocket, since you had just finished Rocket Ship Solo Trip, and so you had an idea of what Rocket was all about, was it easier? Did the images come quicker, flow quicker for you illustrating the second book?
A little bit. I mean, it's always a struggle coming up with the visuals for any book, even though I might have done a previous adventure or story or chapter with those characters. But there is sort of a built-in sort of structure when you have a first book in front of you or behind you, I should say, that you can move to the second book a little more easily. But, still had to create Lander, one of my favorite characters I've ever created. I love him. I still had to create that. Still had to sort of what the moon would look like. Still had to kind of come up with a lunar service to sort of solve that. And just kind of, again, just trying to solve the color palette in this book, to make it fun, interesting, bright, lively, and also reflect what was going on emotionally too. That had to be solved. I think probably more than book one, because there's a real sort of, I mean, there's obviously an emotional core to book one, the solo trip, but I think this one has a little more going on with the two characters kind of interplaying off each other. And so it kind of had to solve that too. So much to build on from book one, but much to develop for this one as well. And I hope readers of book one will come along with us on this one too. I think if you like book one, you're going to love book two even more, I think.
Yeah. I love that. And I love talking to creators about their collaboration. I still find it fascinating to think that, you know, Chiara, as an author, you create this story, this manuscript, and you sell it to a publisher, and then they just take it and hand it to somebody else and go, talk to you in a year. We'll give you the pictures in a year or two. And what's that like sitting at home thinking, what's that person going to do with my story?
Well, I have to say for me, it's a relief. I wish I was more visually artistic. I wish I had, you know, any sort of skill at drawing and things like that. I never tell my kids that I don't, because I want to encourage them and to not feel, you know, down about themselves. And my kids are great at art. But anyway, for me, it was a relief because I knew that I just had to focus on the words. And if I created a story that touches on those emotional points, that alludes to different areas in space that would be interesting visually to represent, I can put my trust in an illustrator and know that the story is going to be beautiful. And I don't have to try and figure out what could it look like, what should it look like, what is the spacecraft going to look like in a way that is both scientifically accurate but also appealing to kids and anthropomorphized. You know, all of those questions. It's a big relief and I'm very grateful that Scott manages to, you know, tackle all those for us. So.
Yeah. Was there a particular rocket ship that inspired Rocket for you, Scott?
Yes. In fact, just to back up and give a little background on that, I looked through a ton of rocket ship drawings that other artists had done. I looked at a ton of real life rockets that NASA had produced. And it wasn't until I found this little outfit called SpaceX, which you might have heard of, that are launching some really cool looking rockets right now. And I based our little rocket on the Dragon rocket that SpaceX is launching and continues to launch because it had a lot of the features that our rocket was using in book one. And, I'm a fan of, I love sort of drawing retro style illustrations, retro style inventions or gadgets or appliances. Love that stuff. Love me an old TV, an old radio. But there is something to be said about bringing in the new, especially with young readers, and incorporating what they're seeing every day or could see every day in our books is important as well. So while my sort of default mind, harkens back to the Saturn V rocket, for example, or the Mercury rockets, that's my time. I'm dating myself a little before my time. Why not bring in rockets of today? And that's why I went and looked at SpaceX in particular, because they've got some really, really cool looking spacecraft flying these days. So kind of sort of based on those rockets for sure.
And if I could add to that quickly, I will say, I was familiar with Scott's work before, and he'd recently done a space-based picture book, and so I was really excited to work with Scott in particular. And I also knew he was a big space enthusiast. And I'd seen, still to this day, so many picture books come out, and they rely on those older spacecraft. They rely on the space shuttle. And I got a sense from Scott early on that he would be, more forward thinking about how spacecraft are represented today. So I'm grateful that we were able to partner on this book.
Yeah. Matt, Scott, I was around when Mercury was up. And so I remember all those rocket ships, and I am amazed that we just witnessed, SpaceX land the rocket back, and it grabbed it out of the sky. How does that happen? That's like,
I know.
like mind blowing.
I know. I have a feeling that we're going to be amazed even more in the years to come, with the new moon missions that are imminent, any day. Well, not any day, but they were supposed to happen. I think they've been postponed a little bit, but I think our amazement, much to my delight in particular, will continue. To your point, I think same. I'm just completely, blown away by what I'm seeing in the space programs.
Yeah, it really, I love, Chiara, that with your book, hopefully it's going to reignite some passion for space exploration. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember where I was when the first moon landing happened. I was coming home from a Godzilla movie, and we heard it on the radio. My aunt was driving us back home from seeing Godzilla, and we were just, everybody was just, and it was all around the world. People were just so excited and inspired by this idea that we can leave this planet and go to another sphere in the universe. And for a long time, that seemed to disappear, and that was it really kind of bummed me out.
Yeah. Another thing I'd say is even just stargazing, even just looking up and realizing, there's like close enough that we can track their movements in the sky. I think there has been kind of a disconnect between kids today in particular and the night sky. One of the first times I read Rocket Ship to a classroom, it was at a preschool, and a 5-year-old raised their hand and said, "Is space real?" And it just hit me. Like, there are some kids who just, bedtime is early. Maybe they just don't have that opportunity to engage with space. So that's really, regardless of whether you want to become an astronaut or just look up at the stars and know a couple constellations and recognize, oh, that's Mars. Isn't that pretty neat? We got robots up there. Even that level of connection, I think we've lost to a certain degree, and I'd love to help kids re-engage with through these books.
I totally agree. I've had a similar experiences, particularly with stargazing or even planet gazing, if that's a word. I've heard people say, "I had no idea you could see Mars with the naked eye. I had no idea you could see Jupiter with the naked eye." I'm like, yes, it's a very small dot, looks like a star that doesn't twinkle. But I think anything we can do to kind of continue the interest, or obviously not rekindle the interest that the space program did for so many, but I don't know, just kind of carry that mission along until a next major space event happens. Happy to have that happen for sure.
Yeah. And I don't know what it's like. We have there are very few stars that I can see from where I am in Boston. It's, and I have such wonderful memories of being in the mountains, camping, and just lying in a sleeping bag at night, looking up and seeing the shooting stars and seeing the millions of stars that are in the sky. And, it's been a long time since I've been able to see that.
Yeah. The light pollution is real.
Yeah, it really is. Chiara, one of the things when I was preparing for this interview, I saw on your website that you would love it if I asked you about Jupiter's moons.
So, you're the first person to take me up on this. Oh my gosh. Now I've forgotten. Is it 95 moons that Jupiter has? Saturn more than that? Oh yeah. Oh, there are so many. Don't quote me now. I'm pretty sure it's 95. But I always mix up Saturn and Jupiter. They've got so many moons, but there's like 4 big ones, the Galilean moons around Jupiter. And my very favorite is Europa. And there's a lot of, like, if you look up Europa, NASA's got a lot of information about that. Oftentimes museums will do focused, exhibitions on Europa because it's this moon that is covered in a crust of ice, which means we're pretty darn sure that there is an ocean of water underneath that crust of ice. And there's going to be enough warmth then that maybe there's a core to that moon. It's one of those moons that might have life within our solar system. We just don't know. It's obviously very far away, and we haven't been able to send technology down to the surface to drill through. But there's just a lot of excitement around Europe. It's so cool to think that there's so much that we don't know about the planets and celestial bodies within our own solar system. So much still to learn, and that's partly why, like, inspiring kids to think more about those things and think, is there research that I could help out with more in the future? Inspiring that curiosity, really. Oh, thank you for asking me about those moons.
But I don't know about you, but, Chiara was very energetic from the start of the interview. But boy, when I asked her about Jupiter's moons, it went, her
Oh, yeah.
lit up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We had the honor and pleasure of presenting last month, I think it was, at Udvar Hazy, the National Air and Space Museum in Chantilly, Virginia. And we're standing there amongst these historic and storied aircraft. For example, the Space Shuttle Discovery is there, the Enola Gay is there, the SR-71 Blackbird is there, and we're standing amidst these incredible artifacts and vehicles. And Chiara starts her presentation and with that same enthusiasm that you just saw or heard. And you get caught up in it, sort of like the gravitational pull of Chiara's knowledge and enthusiasm. Yeah, no, it's really, I was so impressed. And so enthused and inspired by her enthusiasm for her presentation, but also her writing too, and just so impressed that this is her first and second book, respectively, these rocket ship books. So she has a long and storied career ahead of her. I'm certain of that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Scott. Feelings are mutual. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, gosh. Of course.
It was such an honor to be able to present at Air and Space with you. It's just, yeah.
That was so cool.
Yeah.
It must have been, Chiara, it's kind of like the dream of being an astronaut hasn't come true yet, but it seems like your dream of being part of space exploration from here is coming true.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And that's like really is the message of the book. Even when your dream doesn't come true the way you expected, it might come true in a way that brings you even more joy, or that, opens your eyes to new possibilities. I did always dream. I grew up outside of DC, Washington DC. And so I would go to the Air and Space Museum as a kid and think, oh, maybe one day I'll be associated with this museum in some way. And I never would have imagined I'd be able to read a story that I wrote to an audience of kids right there at the Air and Space Museum. Yeah, your dreams can come true in ways you don't expect. And oftentimes that's even more beautiful than what you could have expected.
I love that you're sharing that. And I hope parents, when they're reading Rocket Beams, Lunar Dreams with their kids, explain that to that idea that, yeah, you have a dream. It might not come true exactly the way you're thinking about it, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. There's so many kids who are dreaming about being a singer or a dancer or an athlete, and there's very few people who are able to reach the top tier that everybody is aspiring to. But there are a lot of people in the middle that are leading really full, wonderful, happy lives, as somehow related to basketball or music or art or whatever. So I think that's such an important dream concept to share with kids.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say about it is nowadays, especially with social media, there's this idea of pursuing perfection. You get this idea of you have to display this perfect life. Don't pursue perfection, pursue joy. And if what you're doing brings you joy, chances are it's going to bring others joy by way of seeing, your joy. You don't have to pursue the perfect outcome, or it doesn't all have to go as you expect. It can just be that it makes you happy in the moment, and that's worth pursuing, I'd say.
Scott, did you always dream? I know that Chiara didn't think that she would be an author until she took that class in college. Did you always dream about being an illustrator and artist?
I think I did. Yeah, I was I was an English major, but while I did tons of writing and reading as an English major, I also had a comic strip at my college newspapers called Duct Tape Man. And it was kind of like Spider-Man only with duct tape. That was one big thing that encouraged me to keep drawing. It was my first paying gig as an illustrator. And I loved it. And I loved the feedback I got from my family, from my friends, from my fellow students at the time. And that really kind of just cemented it for me. That's something that I wanted to pursue post college. Of course, prior to that, I've been drawing forever, like so many young people. But I cite that example because it was my sort of first real world published drawings every week, back in the day, back when when there were newspapers, and back when those newspapers had comic strips. So this is absolutely the fulfillment of a dream, sure.
That's awesome. And my wife calls me duct tape man around here because that's the tool I use to fix things.
Well, to tie duct tape into what we're talking about, Star Wars, space, whatever, what have you, it's a bit of a reach. But have you heard that one? The duct tape is like the Force. It has a light side and a dark side, and it binds the universe together.
I hadn't, but I'm gonna use that the next time my wife teases me or complains about me. Boy, Chiara, is there going to be a third book in the series?
Oh, I very much hope so. Nothing official yet, but we'll see. We'll see is what I can say, I suppose.
Awesome. Scott, where can we go to find out more about you and more about Rocket Beams Lunar Dreams?
I am on my website quite a bit, updating it with all kinds of new stuff. You can find me at scottmagoon.com, just my name, scottmagoon.com. Awesome.
Chiara, where can we go to find out more about you?
Yeah, very similar. I've got my website, www.chiaracolombi.com. My first name is CHI, in case you're wondering. Yeah, chiaracolombi.com is where you'll find all the latest. I'm also pretty active on Instagram, and I'm at Chiara B. Colombi on Instagram.
And you have to update your website. So next time you come on the show, there'll be another little hidden question I can ask you that's just going to spark joy.
I will do that. Yes.
I had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Rocket Beams Lunar Dreams. Our guests have been Scott Magoon and Chiara Colombi. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jed. This has been fantastic.
Thanks, Jed.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Woofy and the Dinosaur Adventures, delightful children's book written by Helen Rogerson. Woofy awakens suddenly to a feeling that his friend Bun needs him. When he arrives at the place his nose leads him, Woofy is confused and doesn't find Bun right away. Then a shout from above leads to an amazing experience as he puts his paleontology skills to work. Together, he, Bun, and a cat that hangs around the site wrap up a wonderful adventure involving a T-Rex skull and a very cool twist of an ending. The story is told in a lyrical style that incorporates actual fossil hunting concepts and vocabulary. If you like dinosaurs, friends who help, and adventures, you will love this book. You can check out Woofy and the Dinosaur Adventures and all the Woofy books at unpackyourownhappy.com. Join us right now from the great state of Colorado. Our guest has been either the most, she has the most appearances or the second most appearances on Reading with Your Kids. She's a dear friend of the show. She's here to celebrate her new YA title. It's called In Plain Sight. Please welcome to the show, Leslea Wahl. Hey, Leslea, welcome back.
Hi. It's always so fun to be back. Boy, that was amazing if I've been one of the guests that have been on the most. How special.
It's between you and our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. Both of you were appearing monthly at a time when we first launched for a couple of years. And, of course, you've been on to celebrate your various books and also have always been a part of our Christmas and I think sometimes Easter original story that you and Catholic teen authors wrote together. And so it's been wonderful getting to know you and getting to know about your work.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, it's always special to be on, and it is fun. It's I feel like we're friends. We've never met in person, but we've known each other for a while now.
Absolutely. So I need to know about In Plain Sight. Who are we going to meet in this novel?
Thanks. Yes, In Plain Sight is my newest adventurous mystery. It's actually the third book in my Finding Faith series. And each of the books in that series features a different main character. So you don't need to have read the other books to enjoy this one. They're all, each of them feature a teen girl who is some kind of issues or problems that she has to overcome, and in the process kind of discovers her faith or starts to rely on it a little more. But like all my teen novels, it's adventure and mystery, some humor, innocent romance, and faith all blended together.
This time of life for kids, it's really can be pivotal. I remember when I was in high school, I went to a Jesuit high school, and so I had an opportunity to attend Mass daily at lunchtime. They would have a Mass at all the different lunch periods, and there were times when I was the only one, myself and the priest were the only ones celebrating the Mass, and boy, it really made a huge difference in my life, especially at that time. It was a very difficult time, as it is for a lot of kids in high school.
Yeah, and that's I like to include faith in all my books because I do like to do it in not a heavy-handed way, but that faith can be part of your life and something that is something you can draw on and turn to when you do face difficulties, which especially in the teens, there's a lot of that going on. And it's so hard, especially in this day and age. There's so much out there that's not great for the teens that they're exposed to. So it's nice to have something that has a little bit stronger moral compass to the story, and that they can kind of be their role models for them. And when they face difficulties, they can kind of think, well, those characters did that. Maybe that would work for me as well.
Yeah. So where is this adventure taking place?
Yeah. So this one is set in Minnesota. So the story, the main character's name is Emerson, and she and her father and their dog, Zuri, relocate to Minnesota in the middle of January. So not the ideal place. And so she's not very happy to have been there. Her father's, something happened in their background, and so they're kind of starting anew. And her father gets this job to renovate an old lodge. So of course she's not happy to be there in the brutal cold of the winter. But as the story goes on, she discovers there's a mystery. There's some secret rooms and some mystery at the lodge. And the boy who lives there, whose parents own the lodge, the two of them together kind of start to uncover the mystery. And as she's doing this and feeling more comfortable with him, she starts to kind of face some of the issues from her past and start to get over those.
Interesting. One of the things that you shared with me on your many visits here to Reading with Your Kids is that you are, unlike me, who's what we call cradle Catholic. You converted to Catholicism. What was it that led you to make that choice?
Yeah, so I married my husband. It was Catholic, but I didn't convert right away. We continued kind of searching for a church that would work for both of us. And it actually wasn't until we had children, and I felt that for some reason I really had this feeling they should go to the Catholic school. Just the morals and so forth that we're going to be there. So I was insistent on that. And then when my oldest son was actually in second grade and doing first communion and all that, I just realized, well, I really believe this is important for him, but why haven't I, made the decision? And what it turned out, it was interesting because I grew up, I think I've told you, Mennonite. And so to me, that was like a heritage part, and I felt like I was kind of giving that up. But when I was kind of thinking about converting, someone at the church made the point, it's like, you're not giving that up, you're adding to this, so you don't have to give that part of yourself up. And so I was so happy and felt comfortable and confident about that decision then, and been so happy since, to have, as our family now, we can all, worship together and, so forth, and grow in our faith. So it was a wonderful decision for me. It feel like sometimes it took a while, but we're all on our own faith journey at different times in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm curious. I hope you don't mind. Mennonite, that is a religion that not a lot of people are real familiar with. They might have some idea and think, oh, it's kind of like Amish adjacent. And but can you just share a little bit about what that faith is all about? Because I'm fascinated learning about different faith traditions.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two aspects that I feel like are really key to the Mennonite faith, as I understand it, is that they believe in adult baptism, but they have an infant dedication. But so the adult baptism, or around middle schools when a lot of the teens do that then, and they're pacifists is another big one. So that is how I came to Colorado. Actually, my parents were born and raised in Pennsylvania in a Mennonite community, and they weren't serving in the military, and so they joined what was called 1W service. So they had to do a service elsewhere somehow. So they worked in a hospital here in Colorado, and they brought them out here, and then they stayed ever since.
Oh, wow. Cool. But Mennonites are not, unlike the Amish, Mennonites are more part of the community. Am I right in thinking about that? You're not riding around in buggies and...
Correct. Although they're much more plain, at least back when my grandparents' age, and so when my parents were growing up, like my grandmothers had little coverings and plain dresses, but yeah, weren't as removed from the society as the Amish are.
Yeah, yeah. One of the neat things that I experienced at that Jesuit high school, in addition to being able to celebrate the Mass so often and so easily, was that they really encouraged us to get to know other faith traditions, other religions, and be open to the idea that there may be some truth and some value in all these different traditions and teachings.
Yes, and that's a great point. And Jesuits actually do a really good job of that, I think, of exploring that. That, the Catholic Church is the one that came directly descendant from Jesus and the apostles, and Peter is the first pope. And I won't get into all of it, as time went on, the different Christian religions broke away. But yeah, there's so much that we have in common and believe in the same things. And sometimes it's sad that that gets missed, There's a lot of grace and beauty and many of different religions, not just Christianity, of course, too. But it is important, I think, to understand each other. Instead, it's a good way. So that's a wonderful upbringing that you had.
I was very lucky. Tell me this: when you are writing a book, what's your process? Are you as I've heard some people refer to themselves, a pantser, or do you outline everything? Do you do a backstory on your main character and the other characters, or are you just kind of going and listening to the muse?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm very much a pantser. I kind of get one idea. So for this book, I had a thought of, and I don't want to say it because it kind of will give too much away in the story, but I had this one kind of idea that sounded interesting, and I kind of knew I wanted it to be set in Minnesota because the characters in the first two books of the series were from Minnesota. So I wanted them all to be kind of tied together a little bit. And my husband and I we lived in Minnesota for 8 years. So I remember those cold winters very well. Mm-hmm. So it was fun to kind of bring that to life. And this was the first story that I actually had a timeline on. My publisher at the time gave me, they wanted it set to come out at a certain time. So I had a year to write it. Usually I just kind of let it go on its own pace. So it felt like a little more pressure this time, but it just came together. So I write a little bit every day, like a chapter and a half, and just kind of see where it goes. So I'll kind of write and then think about it the rest of the day. And then the next day I'll like, oh, this would work well and go on this direction. But it is interesting because it always kind of goes off on a new tangent that I didn't realize it was happening. And that's kind of fun. So my favorite part of writing, I think, is reading the first draft. So after I finish a book, I don't go back and do all the little details. I kind of just get the whole story down, and then I go back and read it. And sometimes I don't remember at all where it started or what happened. And so it's kind of, I know it sounds strange, but it's like it new to me as well. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't remember that. And so that's like my favorite part of the writing process. I'm sure everybody has a different, style and so forth. But yeah, I just kind of let it go and see where it leads me. I feel like the Holy Spirit's kind of guiding the stories and where they're supposed to be.
Well, it's wonderful when you have that inspiration. I remember a performance. There was a church here in Boston, actually, that we were attending, and their Life Teen program, they were celebrating their 8th anniversary, and the priest, who didn't really know what I did but had an idea, I magic perform, and he thought, well, what do you do for an 8-year-old's birthday? And he said, well, you invite a clown in. And so I think he invited me to perform mostly as a goof for the college alumni that were coming back. And little did he know what he was getting into. My daughter, who performed with me regularly, was up on stage, and with me at the time, we brought somebody from the audience on stage, and I am just going off. And my daughter's on stage going, Bobby, what are you doing? This isn't part of the script, just a little stage whisper. And I goes, baby, I don't know what's going on. I'm being led, so just go with it. And it was a wonderful time. And the priest came up to me afterwards and he said, I had no idea you had a faith-based magic show. And I said, Father, neither did I.
Sometimes you just got to trust and let it go. See where you're led.
Well, that's something I think that's probably a theme in all of your books, whether they're middle grade or YA, and even your picture book, is that idea of learning to trust what God has in mind for us.
Yes, that's very true. They all tend to be that way. When the very first book I wrote, didn't really plan to be an author. I was searching for good fiction for my kids, and I just couldn't really find, they didn't even have to be faith-based, just books with good messages, because there was so much, just fluff out there. And I feel like books can be such a good guide too, and provide more than just a story. Of course, a fun story is great, but especially teens, to learn a little bit something, or to something about yourself, or to think things through, those other messages are important. And so I always have some kind of underlying theme, and hopefully, I definitely want the story to be enjoyable, and that they have that fun of the story, but that there's something in it that touches them or makes them think about things.
Yeah. So very important. We encourage, obviously, when you hear reading with your kids, you think about picture books, your kids on your lap, you're curled up on a couch. But we really encourage families to continue reading with their kids through the middle grade ages and even into their teen years, because you might not be cuddled up on the couch reading in plain sight together, but you could co-read it, come together on your way to school, around the dinner table. What kind of conversations do you think families might be able to have as they're co-reading in plain sight?
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is such a great thing. A lot of people don't think about that. Is let their kids, they're having their own thing. But if you read the stories together, you don't have to do it at the same time, like you said. It could be like a little family book club. You read it on your own, and then you can discuss it. But it's really a fantastic way for families to be able to open up discussions with teens. Because if I don't know about yours, but you try to bring something up and they shut down. But if you bring something up through at a character, it's, such an easier way for them to discuss something. And at Catholic Teen Books, we have all kinds of different topics that are listed under the parental guidelines. So if you're looking for something specific, that could be a good resource of one to do. For In Plain Sight, some of the main themes for that are like the importance of family, which again, I think that's something that teens, you kind of like, oh, my family's there, but my friends, or something are important. But this really shows, how precious families are, and not to take them for granted and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then also that, like God is leading us all, can use us for it through any situation. So I think with teens, sometimes, like if they're having a difficult time in school or with friends or whatever, can we learn something? Could God use that situation somehow to guide you or for you to help others? Just things like that you don't normally think about, but could be a really wonderful discussion.
Yeah. That's an interesting idea that God can use us to help others. I've heard people use the expression that we can be the hands and feet of God. And I think that can be a really empowering message for our kids, especially for our teens who might, be in that mode. They're not on the honor roll. They're not the sports star. They're kind of finding their way and what can I do? And boy, I don't have a million friends, but the idea that, well, maybe I can be the tool that God uses to help turn somebody's life around.
Mm-hmm. Because we are all given gifts and talents, and some are obvious. Some people, it's like, oh, well, they are such an amazing singer or speaker or whatever. But we all have something, whether, it's just that we can be kind to someone. We can, or have a love for animals. There's always different things that we are individuals and we have different gifts that He gave us. And the other thing, especially in this series of books, I love the idea of, so when the teens kind of are discovering their faith, sometimes it's easy to have an adult or a priest or an old neighbor or a parent say something. But I kind of, in this series, enjoy exploring the idea of other teens bringing people in through different ways into the faith. Because I think, again, that it's important that we can reach out to others, and especially you can find some people that are so strong in their faith they can, lead others. But sometimes even if you're shy, just being that kind person and inviting them to something, to sit with you or to come to youth group or whatever, there's just ways that we can reach people. It doesn't have to be the big leader in at the church or something inviting people. We can each do something to help and help people come to their faith and just to feel welcome.
Yeah. We mentioned a couple of times the Catholic Teen Authors Group. Can you talk just a little bit more about the group and what kind of resources they can find at the website?
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest blessings of my writing career. It was connecting with so many other authors who also write teen fiction. Ours are mostly specifically Catholic, but it's just been such a joy. So we have bonded together and have our own website, CatholicTeenBooks.com. And there's 15 of us, and we're working on getting a few more authors to join us this year. And so there's a huge array of books in all different genres, and from middle grade all the way through college age. We have guidelines so you can kind of see what the topics are if you're searching for specific topics. We have a newsletter, a blog. We have all kinds of resources. And some of the most fun we've had, and you've been helping us with several of the projects. We have these anthologies that we'll do where we each write a short story. Or, as you mentioned earlier, at Christmas, we've been doing those exquisite corpses, as they're called. So a progressive story. One of us writes a little bit and then we pass it on to the next person. And so I haven't met all of them in person, but they really have become such close friends and colleagues. And I think having the books in one place is really a great resource for families. Because, maybe people don't really like romance in their books. So mine might not be for them, but there's, Toni Kolenc has this whole series of, middle age, for middle grade stories, the set in the Middle Ages for boys, but it's a great spot for you to find all the different genres that your whole family could enjoy. And as the teens grow too, from middle grade all the way up. So it's a really great spot for just, I think, to not only find what you need, but maybe gifts as well. It's just a good resource. So like I said, that has been just such a pleasure and an enjoyment to be part of them.
Yeah. And it is a really diverse group of genres and subjects that you write about. You are writing contemporary adventures. Toni, as you mentioned, is writing these stories set in the Middle Ages. And I think Corinna is writing stories about dinosaurs, and it's wonderful. And there's something there for everyone. And I think books and reading books together and talking about them, it's a great way to share your faith and help kids figure things out on their own. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You also have your own website. Lesley, tell everybody where they can go to find out more about In Plain Sight and more about you.
Yeah, my website is lesliewahl.com. Sure, it'll be in the notes because my name's spelled a little different. Mm-hmm. And so you can find out about all my books on there. I have one picture book and then the teen novels, and I have a second picture book that I'm hoping will come out the next couple months. But I also have a whole section of book recommendations, faith-based book recommendations, mostly for teens, but for all ages, really. I picture books all the way through adults. I just feel like that's kind of something I can offer. I do so much reading, and it can be hard to find good fiction and good faith-based fiction, especially. And so I like to have a section on there that you can find all kinds of different genres and little book reviews on them. So it's a great resource too.
Great. We've had a really wonderful time speaking to our friend Leslea Wahl, celebrating her brand new YA book, In Plain Sight. Lesley, thanks so much for being back on Reading with Your Kids.
Oh, thanks so much, and stay warm.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. To make sure you don't miss a moment of the show, please subscribe on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, wherever you find your favorite shows. And if you can, please leave us a 5-star review. That will really help in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Also, please be sure to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And our website, it's readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guests, Chiara Colombi and Scott Magoon, and Leslea Wahl. Please be sure to check out Rocket, Beams, Lunar Dreams, and In Plain Sight. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids. What?